What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Welcome to video number 3 in the School of Sim Racing. Basically, this little mini series that I put together on the how to set up the Wing 360 sprint car. And keep in mind, even though we're at the Charlotte dirt track, these setups and adjustments and stuff like that will work at any track. If you're at Fairbury, for example, you might have to make a bigger change. You might have to move the right rear wheel in further than you would here, right? Or, the wing might be a little bit higher, or, different gear, different stagger, things like that. But overall, the base setup and the concepts behind it work. Okay. And this setup that we started with, this base setup is a base setup that I use on pretty much every track. I do have other setups that I use, and I'm going to go over those in another video. For different situations, right? When I'm trying to do, run certain lines or, accomplish certain things. But for the most part, this is what I run, and it works really, really well. Okay. So we've got our setup from the last video, right? Our heat race. And now we're going to get set for the main. Now we're on a 50% track state. All right. This is typically what you'll see for the main event in an official, MPR sprint car race. Right, so if you're doing, the dirt car, the 360 dirt car race, or the World of Outlaws, the 410s, or if you're doing like Sling Mud for fun or something like that, you're going to usually see something around 50%. All right. Now, if we look at the weather, you can see right here, not very warm out. In fact, it's pretty cool, so that's good. The track's not going to just get super slick through this. I mean, we're doing just a test, but always get into the habit of checking the weather when you're racing. Okay, it makes a difference. Now let's go over the changes. So first things first, we're going to drop down to 11.5 inches of stagger. Now, if you remember, we started, right, practice and qualifying, we had 13. And then I said basically every session I take out a half an inch. Well, if we ran the heat race at 12.5, right, why would we go to 11? That's not a half an inch. Well, remember, if there's a consolation race, right, that's one more session of cars. All right, so we're looking at this as if we had a full race. Okay, practice, qualifying, 2 heat races, a consolation, and now the feature. So I would go down to 11.5 inches of stagger. Next, I'm going to, obviously, we have to put our fuel in. Okay. Now, iRacing recommends 19 gallons. Keep in mind, now that I think with this last update, caution laps are no longer going to count during the features. I don't know if that's for sure. I think that is. I'm not 100% sure. If it is, you're going to really need to make sure that you figure out how much fuel you're going to need for these races, because it's going to change. All right. But 19, I know 19 is good enough for would be a 30 lap feature. So we're going to put 19 gallons in here. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the gear. We've been running a 560. I'm going to go down to a 555. That's going to help me not spin the tires so much, keep the car a little more hooked up. That little bit of gear change helps. It really does. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move the wheel in. All right. I want to get this in. I'm going to move it in to 1675. Remember, I go about 1/4 of an inch per session. All right. Now on the left side, we're going to go to 14. I don't go as aggressive on the left side. Pretty much the furthest out that I will go on the left side is usually 14. I won't go beyond 14. Now, if it's like 100% track, I'll go out to 14.5. But for the most part, I'm at 14 for the feature. Now, our shocks. Leaving the shocks like this, you'll be pretty good. Things will be fine. What I like to do is I like to lower the rebound on these front shocks. The reason is I want them to come up quicker. Right? And remember, it's all about the way that weight transfers. It's all about getting that back end hooked up. So especially if I'm going to run the bottom groove, if I back pedal, that weight's going to shift to the front. Now we've got the bump really high, right? So that's going to pressure on the front wheels, which we need to steer. But when we get back into the throttle, we don't want that weight to stay on the front. We want it to shift back. And so the lighter the rebound, the more that weight will shift. And so I like to run a 5.3 in the feature on the right front, and then a 5.4 or even a 5.3 on the left front. Okay, it just depends on the track and whatnot. So usually it'll be a 5.4 or a 5.3. Honestly, you're not going to notice that much of a difference between the two. If you do notice, you're a seasoned vet. Okay. Another thing is, sometimes I'll also make this right front shock a 6.3. So if I really want to, get some weight shifted to the left side, I'll make it a 6.3. It just depends on how I'm feeling, what I think the track's going to do, where I think I'm going to run, that type of stuff. But 5.3, we should be good right now. I'm going to next, what else do we have? Oh, we have to do our ride height. So I'm going to leave the torsion bars. There's three setups that I'm going to show you. This first one is the simple adjustment setup. All right. And so we're going to leave our bars the same. We did a couple little tweaks on the shocks here. We just lowered the rebounds in the front. Right. We moved our wheels, our right rear wheel in, our left rear wheel out. We took out some stagger, lowered the gear, and now we're going to adjust our ride height for the fuel. Now, keep in mind, we've been running basically straight up on the weight here in the back. And I want to have more left rear weight than right rear weight. And so I'm going to go a full turn on the left rear and then a half a turn on the right rear. Let me see what that gives me. Okay, so we need to go higher. So let's go another full turn on the left rear and 3/4 of a turn on the right rear. And that's pretty good. I've got a 5-pound split. I'd actually like to have a little bit more than that. And so right there, 7 pounds on the 7-pound split on the left rear. That's good. That's good. And that's it. There you go. We are set for the main event. So let's go out and let's turn a few laps and see what we got here. Now, one thing, and I don't see drivers do this nearly enough, when you are on the pace laps, one of the things you want to do, a lot of times I see people and they're sitting there swerving back and forth and they're, goosing it sideways and doing stuff like that. When you're on your pace laps, look for the groove, find out where the slick is, especially going into turn 1. That way you don't hit the slick on the, when the green flag drops. I can't count how many times I see drivers fly into turn 1, hit the slick, slide up, and then take out, people. It happens all the time. So pay attention to where the groove is. That's gonna help you, okay? Also, this is it's a 30-lap main event. You're not gonna win the race on lap 1. I don't care where you start. Now, that doesn't mean go pussyfooting into the corner, but don't go dive bombing people, on the first corner of the first lap. All you're going to do is pile up everybody. All right? Go in, get a feel for your car, because keep in mind, if you've been running the fuel like you're supposed to, you've got, 12, 13 more gallons than what you've been running. It's going to feel way different. I don't care how good your setup is. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's do the bottom first and see how the car feels here. We get right down to the bottom, back off, backpedal a little bit to keep the car there. Give it some gas coming out, nice and smooth. Got a little high there, hit the slick. You really want to try to almost like diamond these corners when the slick's like that, because you're not going to be able to drift up. And also, a lot of times you're going to have a car right outside of you, and so you want to make sure that you're staying down. It's almost better to hit the slick going in than it is to hit it coming out, because coming out is when you can slide up into people, and also it's going to really slow down your straightaway speed. So as you can see, this is pretty good setup here. Haven't had to adjust the wing or anything. In the throttle most of the way, you know, backpedaling a little bit, but so now let's see if we can get up to the top here and see how the car runs around the top. Now, one of the things about running the top is you have to really, really trust the setup and the car. It's so hard to not go in and just want to jerk the wheel to the left. And when the slick is all the way up and you're running up against the cushion like this, it's a very hard thing to do sometimes, because trusting that the car is going to just turn on its own, right, or start to turn, and all you got to do is just give it a little bit of wheel. That's a hard thing to overcome, and a lot of drivers have problems with that. This is why then they get up to the top here and they jerk the wheel and they end up sliding sideways because they're jerking the wheel too much. So you want to really try to let the car do the work, right? That's why sprint cars run stagger, so much stagger. And on this track where the top almost forms like a berm, you're really just trying to hold it, you know, on that. You're not trying to really steer it. Now that's one thing that you'll notice is that it's really rough up there on this track. But if you can run it, it's fast. It's really fast. So as you can see, we got a nice manageable setup here. The car goes where I want it to. Right? It pulls up out of the corners. It sticks to the track. It's got, you know what I mean? We're not sliding everywhere. I don't know what the lap times are, but I imagine they're decent. So decent setup. And most importantly, you notice that we're not sliding, you know, the fuel and everything's not sloshing us all around. And that's one of the things that I notice drivers do a lot, is that they load up the car with fuel and then they don't compensate the ride height. And that is a huge, huge problem, because when your car's sitting that low, you're going to slide like crazy. Your car's not going to roll over and get that bite. So let's see here. First couple laps cruising around. So yeah, we're running in the, you know, low 14s consistently. So that's good. That was my alarm, so forgive me real quick. Had a timer going. So that was setup number one. Let's take a look at the next setup. All right, so our next setup is going to be a little bit different because it's going to be more of an aggressive setup. All right, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So first off, we're going to leave the stagger alone. Okay. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let's just go back and we'll load up the setup that we had after the heat race. Okay. So we're going to bring the stagger down to 11.5 inches, just like we did with the last one. We're going to move the right rear wheel in to 1675. That's going to stay the same. We're going to move the left rear out to 14. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually jack up our bars. We're going to stiffen this car up some. Now, in real life, on a sprint car, you would actually, on these dry slick tracks and stuff like that, you would try to soften the rear end. But for whatever reason, the physics in iRacing, it likes stiffer bars. I don't know why, but it does. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually increase this right front torsion bar. We're going to make it a 1050. And then we're going to leave the left front. And then we're going to make both rear torsion bars 1025s. We're going to stiffen that up. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to actually, with that stiffer bar, it's going to put more pressure on the wheels, right? So in theory, it should actually push down harder. This will help hook the car up. The problem is when it's stiff like that, it can also make for a rough ride in the corners, okay? And you'll see what I mean, especially going around the top. So we're going to stiffen that up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with the front shocks. We're going to go 6.3 on the right front. We're going to go 5.3 on the left front. We're also going to tie down our right rear. So we're going to actually increase the rebound. So not only are we going to have this thing pushing weight down, we're going to try to hold it there. Okay? Then we're going to decrease the rebound on the left rear. So now it's not going to be holding it down on the left side as much. It's going to actually let it roll just a little bit more, right? Finally, we got to add our fuel. We're still going to change our gear. And then we have to adjust our ride heights. Okay? So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put a turn in there. We'll put 3/4 here. Let's see. That's a little too much. Let's drop a 1/4 turn out of the right rear. Maybe another 1/4 turn out of the right rear. And there we go. All right. And as you'll notice with this, we've actually got more left rear weight. We got 11 pounds more on the left rear than the right rear. Our cross weight's a little bit higher. This is going to have, the car's going to be a little bit freer going in, but it should drive off straighter. Okay, so this is a little bit more of an aggressive setup, as you can see, because we've made a lot more changes. This is for the situation where, let's say your base setup feels pretty good in practice. You go through qualifying, you qualify pretty good, and you run the heat race, and you notice that, hey man, this thing, it doesn't quite feel right. And then you get to the main and you're like, okay, what am I going to do, right? And the track is slicked off a ton, right? You were in heat race 1, there was a, heat race 2 and the consolation, and now you're sitting there looking at this dried slick track that's got a bumps, you got Lernerville bumps all down the front straight, and you're like, what the hell am I going to do, right? This is one of those aggressive setups that you can use that will work really well. Okay, I use this setup very, very often. Really, one of the biggest differences, or one of the only differences that I have with this type of setup from different tracks, is my left rear and right rear weight. Right, so it'll differ between a big track and a small track, but it's only by a little bit. It's not a ton. There's not going to be an instance where I've got 30 more pounds on the left rear than the right rear. I don't do that on these cars. So that's it. That's what we got. So let's go out. Let's turn some laps on this one. Let's see how it does. Let's bring up the telemetry for this session. I pinched that corner off. Let's try this again. There we go. Get the car rotated. Whoa! Overcorrection. Whoa! Car feels way different. So this kind of setup, I'm going to be honest with you, if I plan on running the bottom, I actually don't really use this. I try to keep the rear end a little bit softer. Because it doesn't feel, and remember, this is all about feel. It doesn't feel as good to me to have the car stiffer. Now that's me. For you, you might be like, hey man, I actually like it. I like running the bottom like that, and that's great. That's awesome. If that's what works for you. That's why I'm showing you these different versions of it. Okay. So it really is just going to depend on how you're feeling and what you think is going to work. Now, one of the really nice things though about a stiffer setup is the top, because it usually helps out quite a bit on the top. You can see how this thing is definitely hooked up here on the top. Looks a lot straighter and faster than our last setup. Now it is rougher. Oh, got sucked into the wall. It is rougher, so you have to be prepared for that. Especially if you try to run up, actually in that cushion, because it's going to get bumpy. But if you can get it up there and you can control it, it's fast. It's really fast around the top. It's fast and it's consistent, and that's really the nice thing about it. You can see how we're not falling off the top like we were with that last setup, and that's because those stiffer bars help with that. like I said, the physics of this simulation are pretty good. Now they're not exact, they're not, you know, exact to real life, but they're pretty dang close. They do a pretty good job. I gotta admit that. And this is one of those things that you just have to, you know, that's not like it would be in real life, but you know, it is what it is. And so until they change something, right? If you want to run the top, especially when you have a track like this, like Charlotte, you know, where you got this berm up here, this stiffer rear end, it will help you. The only thing is, and this is what you need to know, your margin of error is much smaller. So it can be a much faster setup, but your margin of error is much, much smaller. All right, let's take a look at the last one. Now, this last one is, I'm going to be honest with you, this last setup is one that I would typically use on a track that was beyond 50%. So this would be like a 60, 70, 80% dry. We're talking like a super dry slick track, okay? So once again, I'm going to lower the stagger down to 11.5. All right, that's what I'm going to do. My rules for the stagger are the same with all these setups. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the left rear bar. We're going to run 1.25" bars on the right front, and left rear, and then on the right rear, we're going to leave it at 1,000. We're going to run a reverse split in this car. Then we're going to jack up these shocks. We're going to go 6.3 on the right front. We're going to go 5.3 on the left front. We're going to bring in our right rear wheel, same as before. Move out the left rear wheel. Okay, I'm going to leave the rear shocks as is. I'm going to change the gear. And then I'm going to put my fuel in and adjust my ride height. And that is a little too much. Right there. That's what I want, right there. So let's test this one and see how it does. Now with this reverse split, what this is going to do is it's going to mean that the right rear is going to be softer than the left in terms of the bar. But the left rear is going to be hooked up more. And so what you're going to notice is that the car is going to be, you're going to have more cross weight, especially with the bars like that. So you're going to notice the car is going to want to get into the corner easier, but it's going to want to drive, it's going to want to really drive off straight. And so this setup is really good for the bottom, but you have to be really smooth, because here's the deal. When you hit that gas pedal with all that left rear bite, it's going to want to shoot up to the wall. I mean, just like that. I mean, you have to, if you can run it good, it's a really, really fast setup, especially on a track where you can run the bottom. Like if everybody's running the top and you want to be different, it works really, really well. Problem is if you miss that line or you mess up, it's going to shoot you straight up into the wall. And it takes some getting used to, because the weight feels different, right? Because you're not driving out as much off. Whoops, messed up there. Having trouble talking and driving. You're not driving as much off that right rear as you were before. You're driving, off on the left rear. Now, when it comes to running the top, it'll still work, and it'll work, pretty well. It's just you got to be careful because you've got that reverse split. And so what? Oh God, I just sucked into the wall. And so what'll happen is this car will want to snap into the wall if you're not careful. It's actually a pretty good setup for running the top if you're one of those drivers who has a hard time keeping it straight. Because since you've got so much left rear bite, the car will naturally want to straighten itself out. So if you're jerking too much on the wheel, the car will actually straighten itself out some for you because of the setup. Problem is that when you come out of the corner, if you're not careful, it'll snap you right into the wall, just like that. That's really the thing that you have to understand about that you have to understand about these setups is it's not really right or wrong. Yes, there are setups that are better than others. Of course there are. But it's a trade-off. You're trying to find that balance. And that's why I showed you these 3 different versions of, these are all setups that I have ran in the features. And I have won with all 3 of these setups. Okay? And so they all work. It's going to really depend on what feels best to you and what you like the best. Okay? If, full disclosure, the setup that I run the most often in the feature is this one, where I've got the stiffer rear end. I got the 1050 in the right front, and I got the 1.25 inch everywhere else around. And then I got my ride height set, and I'm good to go. I lighten up the rebound on the left rear, increase the rebound on the right rear, and that's the setup that I will use the most in the feature. Reason being is a lot of times, I'm going to be running the top. If it's a track where I'm going to be trying to run the bottom a lot, where I think if I'm starting further back in the field and I'm thinking I'm going to have to pass cars on the bottom, then I'll run, one of the other setups. If I'm starting up front and if I'm on the pole and my goal is to just get up to the top and go, then I'm going to run this setup. Okay. So it depends on the situation and the track, but the main thing you want to do is take these setups that I've showed you, right? Jot them down, write some notes, save them, and then go out and practice with them, test them, see how they feel for you, see which ones work the best for you, and then go from there. You might not need to make every adjustment that I showed you. You might, use the base setup and go, hey, look, Tommy, all I do is move the wheels in, move the right rear wheel in, and take some stagger out, and I'm good to go. I don't touch anything else. Great. Awesome. I hope that works for you. Like whatever works best. But now you've got an idea, you've got a good base setup that you can use, you've got some setups that you can use, and now you've got something that will work. So take them and go practice with them. Don't just take them and start racing with them, because they're not, if you've been using iRacing setups, these are going to feel completely different. So take these, go out, practice with them until you get a feel for them, and then take them into the races. Do that, and I can tell you're going to start seeing some better results. So that's going to do it all for this video. Now, really quick, do me a favor. If you like this, please hit that like button and make sure to subscribe. All right. This is the first little video series of many, many more that I'm going to be doing for iRacing, the sim racing in particular. I absolutely love this stuff. And like I said, I want to do midgets and sprint car, no wingless and modifieds and late models, all of it. So subscribe. Plus, I'm going to be doing NASCAR stuff and everything like that too. In the future, not right now, but in the future. So make sure you subscribe and then share this stuff. Share it with, your leagues, your forums, all that stuff. Get this stuff out there so other people can see it and they can use it. Let's have some fun racing where people, have got some decent setups and can actually go out and race. They're not, smashing into each other because they got some crap setup that they've got from some forum from 3 years ago that's never been updated or something like that. You know what I mean? So share this with them. And then leave a comment down below. Let me know if this helped you. If it did, how did it help you? All right? If you won with it, whatever. And then also comment below and let me know what you want to see next. Right? Do you want me to do a midget video next? Do you want me to do, a breakdown for each individual adjustment, right? Like when should you change torsion bars before you change shocks? When should you adjust ride height? When, that type of stuff. Whatever it is, let me know in the comments down below. Do all of that. And then I'll see you in the next video. And until then, I want to wish you good luck, good racing, and take care.